We are all so busy these days, and we're always looking for helpful tips and advice on how to find a better work-life balance. We all have to earn a living and pay the bills, but are you doing enough to look after yourself and your health at the same time? Now, many of us prioritise careers and work, and we're slaving over our computers and mobiles all the time. But does this make you cut corners on your diet, exercise or sleep? I'm Dr. Ben Sinclair, and welcome to Health versus Wealth with Dr. Ben. Our guests share their life experiences and we discuss their challenges in their health and their wealth. I hope their experiences will help you with your life and health. I'm joined today by Narinder Sheena, a chronic pain and mindset coach who had an interesting long career in the legal sector. And I'm interested to know, Narinder, what made you change your career and why?
Yes, thanks, Ben. It's been not an overnight decision, when you've worked really hard to become a lawyer. But I got into self-development over 10 years ago with neuro-linguistic programming, formerly known as NLP, and also coaching. And what I recognised was I was very into human behaviour and human connection. And I loved being a lawyer, but I found it was more in a corporate sense rather than anything coaching style. Even though I was a mentor and I was training, it didn't give me the same passion that I used to have.
Right.
It was over a transition of over 7 years. So it wasn't an overnight. And I think if we go into deeper, that there were a lot of nuances along the way where I was feeling unfulfilled. I loved what I was doing, but I knew something had to change.
Interesting. And a lot of my guests have these pivotal moments in their life where something pushes us towards a change. Have you experienced a particular pivotal moment in your life which made you decide to leave the law behind and really go for becoming a coach?
Sure. So after having qualified as a coach back in 2015, I was still leading a team in the legal sector. But again, that trigger, the values that coming with it as well were not aligned. And when I had my second child, I started realising something's amiss here. I knew that I was unfulfilled. That was a really big, I knew this and I felt frustrated, but I still couldn't figure out exactly. And I started getting chronic pain.
Interesting. So the unfulfillment you directly link to sense of pain.
And it was a lot to do with my emotions.
Right.
I had lost my father in 2017 and we have this thing where we think we have to practically go back into working, that it's good for us, that we, that's the best way to do it, to do things. But what I started to realise is that I hadn't processed the emotions the way I should have done.
Right.
Because we suppress them or we don't channel them in the way that we think we should be doing. So it's more of doing rather than being. And I started to realise quite quickly that that was causing an effect on my body.
So you've mentioned this, important aspect of pain, is caused by emotions. What was your pain like?
Very bad. If I could give it a scaling out of 10, it was 11.
Wow.
I could barely walk. I could barely stand. To even brush my teeth, I remember I used to sit on the toilet thinking, how did it get to this? And I think the worst thing was I couldn't even pick up my children. My baby was, 7 months old? I couldn't even sleep with him, pick him up. I couldn't even walk with my toddler. She was 3 at the time. I couldn't even walk with her. And she held out her hand, and I thought to myself, that is killing me inside. And that was the biggest thing that motivated me to go, I need to overcome this, and I need to do it. My why was my family. Once I realised the emotions, I had a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear. And this built up over duration of time. And then that's when I started realising I've got pain in my body. I wasn't exercising, I wasn't doing anything. I was just focused on, just being depressed, being down, and not looking at what can I do to better myself.
So you're really being dragged down by these heavy things you've been through, trauma. You had a newborn, and so what did you start doing to find solutions in this sort of almost like a pit of despair you're in?
Yeah, I mean, so when I first had the niggle, I went to a doctor, and because we trust medical professionals, and I don't usually go to the doctors a lot. I'm quite stoical.
Okay, yeah,
thinking,
a lot of people are. Yeah,
I'm stoical, but the reason I went is because I couldn't get an explanation as to what kind of cause it could be. And
so you went to the doctors, and you were looking for a cause of the pain.
Yes, and unfortunately, I mean, the doctor was pleasant, it was great, but he never asked me, what's going on with your life? What's happening right now? Which I think, in a way, I would have welcomed a bit more, and I can't openly just express what I was going through. And sometimes when you're focused just on symptoms, then I'm just going to give the standard responses. And then when I started having physiotherapy over lockdown, I mean, can you imagine no actual physical therapy?
That must be very difficult in lockdown scenario.
It was, because the physiotherapists just trying their best over the laptop. And what I realised was this pain exacerbated. An alien kind of pain, I'd call it. A pain, I couldn't say it was muscular, it was just an alien pain that really went through my body. And I started to get frightened. And when the words of, oh, well, there's no surgeons available, maybe surgery, I got even more frightened with those kind of words.
Wow. So, I mean, so you were offered physio, you had that, you were offered, were you offered medication?
Not at that point, but it was where I needed medication. And I did actually order medication, the strongest painkillers you can imagine, but I left them at the pharmacy. I did not pick them up.
Now, why did you do that? That's an unusual thing. You went, you started down this course. Were you like driving there and said no? Or what happened?
So
what stopped you?
So I was in a merry-go-round at this point. So not just physiotherapy, everything was locked down at the time, but I was desperate. But I came across a book called Dr. Sarno, Healing Back Pain. And that, I have to say, was my shining hope, my light bulb moment.
Now you're talking about John Sarno, the famous mind-body doctor, who had a fantastic book, which I think we connected over through a mutual friend who is an expert in chronic pain. So what did you take away from Dr. Sarno's book?
He was talking to me in each of those pages, talk about personality traits, people-pleasing, suppressed emotions, subconscious anger. That was really helpful to understand myself and become aware. And that was the first step where I became aware and gone, okay, where do I go with this? And when I read that book, I straight away Googled again to find where I can find more information, which is where I stumbled across Georgie Oldfield. Right,
okay, amazing. And how long did it take you to sort of feel well again, for your pain to move on or to change?
It's funny you asked me that. Somebody asked me that a few months ago. What was the date? And when you're healing, you're in it, so you don't really realise. But because I kept a chronic pain tracker, so every day I used to write down what are my goals,
right, how
I felt, and what reward I would give myself. It was in April 2021, so approximately 14 months.
Wow, okay. So 14 months worth of sort of hard graft with pain on board, looking for solutions. And how did you feel about the advice you've been given or the options you've been given by the medical profession?
I wasn't given many options, unfortunately. I mean, I'm thankful to Georgie and the literature that I had been researching, the books I was reading to really educate myself, which was a really important aspect. The neurosurgeon, who was really pleasant and very good, in a private consultation, showed me imaging of MRI scan and said, look, you've got a severe disc prolapse, you need surgery. I was hoping maybe an injection or maybe an alternative option.
So you thought there might be something sort of less invasive. And it's funny, isn't it? Because as doctors traditionally, I think we do a scan and then we say, right, we've got to do something with this. Let's cut it out, let's do something. But if you scan many people who have no symptoms at all, often they'll have an abnormality on their scan. Now, we don't treat them, and yet why is it that we're, then associating a scan image with the pain that you're having, whereas you clearly had a strong sense that it was an emotional thing?
And had I not got that support, and I had to reach out, I was desperate. And so having a community support like Georgie, going on to her SERPA program, really gave me that more education. And she had given me literature about it. And when I started to learn that, I was like, of course I can heal myself. Thousands I've had. And the literature, I'd reached out to Howard Schubiner in America, and he told me, Narinder, soothe your nervous system. Again, Stephen Olzenich with a great book, The Great Pain Deception. He said, if thousands have recovered, why can't you? Because I was panicking, telling him the gyms have closed. He goes, that's a good thing. He goes, B, don't keep doing. And so when we relax our mind, that nervous system that's on false alert needs to be calmed down. And when you start to recognize where has it started, and I really need to strip back to my childhood to really understand, okay, this is what I'm about, this is what I'm made up of. So how can I help myself going forwards?
Amazing. Now, did you have any particular therapy, or was this all self-help that you learned and applied to yourself?
Interestingly, I had some psychotherapy because I thought, okay, maybe that might help, some past trauma. And actually, the past trauma will help with past traumatic things, but it's not actually going to help with the chronic pain aspect, because that's something you do need peer-to-peer support, I believe. I sought out a help from a coach in LA. Jeannie Colwyn was amazing. I went to her because she suffered from years of chronic fatigue and overcame it. And all I needed was championing. I suppose I had benefit of having been a coach before, knowing the benefits myself. But a lot of people out there don't know. They're not aware. And I think advocating that, to have that awareness, have that support, somebody partnering with you by your side saying, yes, no matter what thought or feeling you've got, you're in a safe space.
It's really empowering, isn't it, to see that actually you do have some options, and that, we can actually work these things out. And I think so many times doctors in the past, and I was guilty of it earlier in my training, would dish out prescription medicines rather than look at the root cause of a problem. And it's so nice now working for Dr. Finley's to be able to go deep into the systemic causes, work with the psychologist, work with the nutritionist, work with the mindset, and actually understand, where is this coming from? Because often it's not physical.
No.
And we give people, mind-numbing drugs to try and sort of stop the pain. But actually, I think that stops us processing the cause of the pain, which is often traumatic.
A lot of people, even I would, we want a quick fix, don't we? We
course
want
we
the
do.
easy solution. We want to avoid pain at all costs.
Exactly, a pill for every ill.
But we have to go through pain to get the pleasure, and it's uncomfortable. It addresses a lot of things. Now, I had to start journaling. I had to write down things. And for a lot of people, that opens a lot of dark can of worms. And these are dark thoughts. Now, I started realising when I started doing my timeline, what were the things that affected me? And when I really looked back, there was trauma. My mother, I saw her at the age of 4 or 5, suffering a mental breakdown in front of my eyes. I got ushered away. But I compartmentalised that for years away until my adulthood thinking, oh gosh, that was significant, but I didn't openly speak to anyone about it. It's just a thing, it happened, and you move on with life. But then those triggers will keep on happening throughout your life, and you think, well, why did that happen? And, having a parent that's mentally ill, of course that's going to have a significant effect.
Absolutely.
And you don't know how to cope but the way that you've always coped.
Yeah, and I think the age at which we are when these things happen, we will cope with them in that way that we learned at that age. And so we'll carry that way all the way through to adulthood. And so if we don't have the apparatus to understand what is mental health at 5 years old, what is a breakdown, who can I talk to about this, or is it part of my cultural experience to even recognise mental health? We're not going to have the apparatus to deal with that. So the way that we deal with it is sort of encapsulated in our brains, in our bodies, at the age at which it happens to us, which means that an awful lot of us are going to have these traumas that we haven't processed properly. Narinder, with your change in career, you're a perfect example of someone who's prioritised their health over their wealth. But what is it exactly that you do?
So my business is called MAP Coach, Mind Action Progress. And why? It's all about the mindset. But before that, I try and give the clients that I work with now, not just in a one-to-one or workshop, that awareness, that education, the belief that their mindset is the first thing to work on. So these were the reasons why I named it MAP Coach, and I'd love to get people to become aware and educate so that they can help themselves to become better and heal.
Now, as a coach, you were a coach before you became crippled with chronic pain. Are you now living pain-free? And, what are you doing to maintain yourself now with your mindset on? Because obviously you're a chronic pain and mindset coach. So how do you coach yourself?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, this year I made that big transition of changing from a lawyer to a coach, and I upskilled with doing another coaching course with Optimus, a Coach Academy, where it's all about the neuroscience and the positive psychology. And what I realised, my biggest value and non-negotiable is self-care. And encompassing in self-care is my emotional regulation. I have to be regulated.
So self-care and emotional regulation, the key mainstays of your day. What does that look like on a day-to-day basis, Narinder? So what are you doing day to day for that?
Yeah, so number one, I need to do some kind of activity. I've got a treadmill at home, so if it, like today I did 20 minutes, that's what I can do. I've got weights, so some days I'll do weights. Then if I need a spot like a massage or Reiki, so I do things like that, go outside for a walk as well. So I make sure my mind is fresh. I make sure I take time out in the morning. With 2 young children, it can get hectic going to school.
Yeah.
So I always make sure I've got some quiet time for myself. I don't have caffeine straight away anymore. I give my body that time. I get a really good sleep now. 7 hours. I used to get about 5, and I used to convince myself, as a lawyer, I only need 5 hours. That was my justification. I only need 5 hours.
It's funny, isn't it? We don't love ourselves enough to say, what do I deserve? We just say, what do I need? What can I get by on?
The self-compassion. That's a really big one, because I've always been hard on myself. But with other people, I can be the champion. You can do it. You can, what would you say to your best friend? And I say that to myself. Narinder, how well have you done? You should be so proud of yourself. So taking into account how kind we should be for ourselves, writing self-reflection as well. These are the kind of things I have in my toolkit for my self-care. And I think that has to be, for me, my ultimate priority before I can even look at anything else in my day-to-day.
And, through this, you mentioned journaling. I'm a big fan of journaling, keeping notes. You must have kept quite a lot of records of kind of your journey through chronic pain. I
did. Interestingly, I read this book by Fred Amir. I think it was Neck and Back Pain Recovery, and he used to write a diary. And I remember, I think it was just before my private consultation, I started thinking, right, I'm going to write goals. And they were so small, like walk 3 minutes, stand for 3 minutes, just minor. And then what I would do is write out how I felt that day. And then what reward, I love dark chocolate. I'm a sucker for dark chocolate. There's
some good benefits of dark chocolate as well,
course.
In moderation.
Well, the midwife told me this, so then I thought, I'm lacking in iron, it's okay, let's have some dark chocolate. But what was interesting is my emotions every day. When I was tracking it, I look back now and I've still got the handwritten notes, that there were days that I was just in pain, that it hadn't changed, I was stuck there. Then the other days I was doing great. So it wasn't linear like this, it was non-linear, so it's up and down, and my emotions were going with that wave. But what I loved was that I was kept going, the consistency, because I had my why. I knew my why.
It's so important, the why, isn't it?
It was, and they always say, always remember your why, because if you don't, then you lose the goal that you're setting yourself for.
I think that's so important. And in my journal, you've got your main goal, your priorities, what you're excited about, what you're going to do to feel happy today. And Dr. Finley's, we really recommend people to use these kind of tools and to be well connected with their mind, body. Otherwise, we're just drifting. We don't really know what we're doing. We're just doing a series of behaviours, but we don't really know why. So Narinder, you've been through all this challenge and you took these notes and they've turned into a book. Tell us all about it.
Yes, it has. It's a book titled From Pain to Power. And with that title, I want people to know that there is hope. You know, that the journey that I've gone through and the reasons that we all might be suffering from some kind of pain. And it all starts, in my view, with emotional pain, with the mind-body connection that manifests through the body. And that we shouldn't be frightened of chronic pain, that we should find ways. And I think one of the biggest things that I want to advocate to a lot of people out there is they shouldn't feel alone, that they're suffering by themselves, that they're in this dark place. There is support, there are resources. This book showcases that. And I want them to know that it's normal to feel these emotions, to feel this debilitation. You know, things like anxiety, we all get it at different stages, but we don't recognise it. So just getting that unconscious into the conscious brain and to really transform ourselves, it's not easy.
Now, that's really exciting to hear. You've got a book out and it's empowering. What kind of stuff are you dealing with in the book? Are there tools in there?
It's a toolkit. It's a personalised toolkit. Right. And this toolkit is really going to help them if they look at the book in detail and do what is asked of them. And it can be anything. It's trial and error. No one size fits all, because chronic pain, as you know, is complex. Everyone's got different types of trauma and adverse childhood experiences. You know, what I might experience will be different to what you experience. And I asked that question, what did you do for your 21st birthday? You know, we all got different feelings, the way we see things, the way we hear things. And that's how our life journey is. And with these tools of, you know, there's meditation in there. We've talked about journaling. But there's also about support groups. It's a huge thing. Having someone who's non-judgmental, compassionate, even somatics. One thing I did was somatic tracking, which is amazing.
Tell me about somatic tracking.
So, and that's all about how you can connect your brain to your body.
Okay.
Where you see the pain as not a fearful thing, it's a safe sensation. It's there to protect us.
So you're tracking where a pain goes in the body and noting that for more information to guide you?
Yeah, just to say, well, actually, is it in that pain? When I started doing, I was listening to Alan Gordon on a podcast. And obviously I took on the Curable app, and I remember I was like, this is so interesting. Where one part of the pain was, it actually moved, or it reduced, or it heightened. And it doesn't matter if it increases or decreases. The part is connecting the brain to the body. Yes. It actually, the more we become mindful of that, the more we can start to ease our nervous system to go, actually, it's safe. We're an observer, and we're not doing anything other than observing it and knowing it's a safe sensation to really help us to go, we can walk. Yes, it's painful, but we're not damaging our body like we think we are.
And we always think, you know, my knees are shot, you know, I shouldn't walk. And I hate those stories where someone's told they can never walk again.
Well, it's the language we're told. If we're told that, you either going to go one of two ways. You either accept it and go, I can't do it because the doctor's told me, or you go, actually, they've told me that, that's thank you, but now I will find my way of dealing with that and recovering. Because, you know, sometimes when someone tells you can't do that,
it makes you want to do it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And definitely the language. So all these parts about the myths of chronic pain, the language that is used, and it's nobody's fault. We all have a shared vision of helping people. The medical profession are aware of it. So are the health coaches. And what we want to do is join forces to really help millions.
Absolutely.
We know chronic pain now is low back pain is one of the number one causes. Anxiety increased over the pandemic. So those two things, can we then try and help and advocate this?
Absolutely. And we don't want to just leave people sort of saying, oh, look, here, keep taking these pills, because you end up with the opioid pandemic like you've got across the world at the moment. And after working in prison for many years, I saw so many people with, you know, emotional trauma making their pain so much worse. And I think, you know, at Dr. Finley's, we work integratedly with coaches, with our physio, breath coach, because breathing is so important about processing trauma, the psychologist, of course, with a strong mind-body link, and nutrition, and that general good advice from, you know, sort of a chronic pain aware doctors who aren't just going to dish out loads of pills, because actually it's about solving the problem, not just sticking a plaster on it.
And the root cause. And so through the journey of the book, that's what I'm trying to give people, that awareness, that education, that belief. But you've got to take accountability. You really got to take your own account. And where are you starting from? What mindset approach are you at, first of all? And that's where we have to get to with people, of where are they in their journey of life.
I love that. And I think, you're a great example of someone who has, made significant changes to their life and taken action. And as a result, you're building a new balanced, kind of life as a coach. Tell me, you gave up a well-paid, respected job as a solicitor. You've transformed into a coach. Is it worth it?
Oh, it fills my cup every day. It took me 7 years to make this transition, and it's been worth it. My purpose, I feel I can advocate a lot more. I can make a difference. I'm making a difference in a human being's life, from pain to being able to walk. The clients I've had this year, I had a lady with 10-year chronic back pain, significantly reduced pain. Now, these are people who are finding joy in their lives.
That's wonderful to hear. And someone who's suffered for so long, how does it feel to you when you see your clients get better?
Oh, that lights me up. And the whole point of being a coach, this is what I love, championing people on to wherever they need to get. Because all they need is that support. Somebody to deeply listen to them in a non-judgmental way, and to partner with them, to allow them to have their thoughts be processed by themselves. It's that awareness. When they can evoke their own awareness through the questions I ask, they start understanding and becoming aware. And that's all it takes for them to start making that transformation themselves.
That's wonderful. Now, I know you're also quite keen to speak on this subject, and you're looking to become more of a speaker to raise awareness.
Definitely. So, yes, for public speaking, to share any thoughts as a lived person with chronic pain, but also an advocate of how I can help, and how coaches, worldwide can help with chronic pain, with other chronic diseases. It's not just back pain. We suffer from migraines or anything else. They're all the same thing. But how do we know until we can advocate that? So, yeah, that would be really good to do that and carry on speaking about it.
Wonderful. Now, it's been so interesting talking to you today, and I've really learned a lot about just this transition that you've gone from. Often people say it's a one-off, line in the sand moment. For you, it's been a transition, and you talk about the ups and downs of life rather than just a linear, complete switch. We never switch, sort of immediately. Often it's a slow process we come to, but you've really demonstrated some of the features of our Health versus Wealth podcast here today, Narinder. So I want to thank you for coming in and for sharing your story with us. So thanks for coming today, and I wish you a safe journey home.
Thank you very much.
So that's it for today. I hope my guest and I have helped you meet some of your health versus wealth challenges. Now, to hear more from me, Dr. Ben, why not subscribe on your usual podcast platform? And if you like my advice, or you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can email me on podcast@drfinlays.co.uk. Anyway, I hope to see you again, but for now, it's goodbye from me, Dr. Ben.